Hello, and welcome to ACT Prep. I'm your English teacher, Miss Bear. We have begun working on one of our final skills for the ACT English test, or practice, or whatever you want to call it, but getting you prepared to score your absolute best on the ACT test. We've been looking at conventions of standard English, and that took the majority of our time. The reason it took the majority of our time is because the conventions of standard English is more than 50% of the test. So last time that we met, we began working on production of writing, and we talked about there being two skills or sub-skills under production of writing. Those sub-skills are topic development and organization. The last time we met, we talked about topic development, so today we are going to be talking about organization, unity, and cohesion. And there are 5 learning targets under organization, unity, and cohesion. You have determined the appropriate transition word or phrase, determine the most logical place for a sentence in a paragraph or text, provide a suitable introduction, conclusion, or transition within a text, rearrange sentences in a paragraph to establish a logical flow, and determine whether or where to divide a paragraph. And so today we are actually going to be looking at all 5 of those learning targets through the practice test that you took. So let's dig right in and let's talk about determining the appropriate transition word or phrase. There is only one item in your test that talks about or that hits that learning target, and it's number 54. Although he had his troops channel most of their efforts into the road, Young was just as concerned with maintaining the park's natural features. His troops guarded the grounds against illegal grazing, poaching, and logging. Nevertheless, science tourist foot traffic tended to damage some of the giant sequoias. Young had his soldiers place fences around the most damaged trees to protect them from further harm. And so our options are no change, additionally, thus, or still. And so does nevertheless fit as the appropriate transition word in this place in the text. Well, let's look at what each of these words mean. So if we look at nevertheless, that means in spite of. So did the foot traffic damage some of the sequoias in spite of something? No, I don't think so. So it can't be F for no change. Additionally means in addition to. So if you look at the previous sentence, his troops were guarding the grounds against that illegal grazing, poaching, and logging, and there were some foot traffic that was damaging some of the trees. So that's where we go with the word additionally. These are some of the issues that were at hand. And so, but let's look at what thus and still mean, just so we can make sure that we have chosen the absolute best response. Thus means as a result. So did the foot traffic happen as a result of this grazing, poaching, and logging? I don't think so. That one doesn't really fit. Then still means that something happens or is true, though there is something else that might prevent it from happening in the future. Well, that doesn't really connect those two sentences, so that is not an effective transition. So the best answer for number 54 is the word additionally. So it's letter G, which you should have already had, but now you understand. You need to know what all of these transition words mean, or as many as you can. So what I would do, again, use that No Red Ink, use that Grammar Monster, and I forgot what Khan Academy. Use those to help you practice those skills, and they will also, all 3 of those websites will also give you the definitions to the transitions so that you understand and you can make those connections. All right, let's look at the next skill that comes under that sub-skill, or the next learning target, is determine the most logical place for a sentence in a paragraph or text. And so if you look at question 15, it asks about the entire preceding passage. as a whole, and it gives you some options as far as where to put a particular sentence. So in this particular learning target, there are 2 items on your test, 15 and 30. We're looking at number 15. So in those types of questions, you have in your text, you have boxes with letters, and these would say point A, point B, point C, or point D. So if you look at where the writer is considering adding that sentence, it works best in point B in paragraph 1. And the reason that makes the most logical sense is because that particular sentence goes along with the sounds that are being generated. Her talking stick, for instance, was a 6-foot-long baton that could record and replicate sounds. The passage or that particular paragraph in that particular area of the paragraph had been talking about the various sounds and where those sounds come from. So that is the most logical place for that sentence. All right, let's look at that next learning target. It is provide a suitable introduction, conclusion, or transition within a text. I want you to see how many items are being tested on the test that you just took. Numbers 5, 16, 18, 38, 47, 59, 65, and 75. Whew, a suitable introduction, conclusion, or transition within a text. This is a skill that they believe you should be solidified in. You should know how to do it, and they're going to make sure that they test you on this particular skill. So for this learning target, we're going to look at 2 different items. The first one that we're going to look at is number 65, and that is an introduction, and then we're going to look at a conclusion, and we'll see the difference between what those 2 look like. So let's look at 65 because it looks at a suitable introduction. Given that all of the choices are accurate, which one best helps the sentence introduce the main focus of the paragraph? So first off, you need to know what is the main focus of the paragraph. So let's read it. TD has no brain or heart. After fertilization, a TD egg develops into a free-swimming ovoid larva. In time, the larva settles on the ocean floor and transforms into a mound of cells, a hydroid colony. Buds grow on the colony and develop into young jellyfish with the familiar bell-like shape and tentacles. These jellyfish then detach from the colony and drift away, reaching maturity in a few weeks. That sounds to me like it is a life cycle. So you have fertilization, the development, and then talks about the larva and what it does, and then it becomes part of a colony, and then they develop, and then they detach. So we know that the answer is a multi-stage life cycle. The original introduction says TD has no brain or heart. Does that really matter in this paragraph? Is that an effective introduction? No, it's not. That paragraph is not about the pieces and parts necessarily. It is about the life cycle of that TD. Okay? We got that? Good. Now that's a suitable introduction. Now let's look at suitable conclusions. So we're going to look at item number 59 here. So let's look at that. Which of the following choices best concludes the sentence and the essay? So it's asking for both, concludes the sentence and the essay. And so it's given us this option. So let's read that paragraph. Over 100 years later, the contributions Young made possible are counted among the most significant in the park's history. In 2003, the National Park Service decided to formally recognize the efforts of Captain Young, who had been promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in 1916. Today, those who visit the park use Young's Road to reach the giant forest, which is home to General Sherman, the world's largest tree. So, let's think about the rest of the essay and the rest of that particular, the essay as a whole and this last sentence. So the entire paragraph, or I'm sorry, the entire essay does talk about Young's contributions. And so this paragraph, this last paragraph, does kind of reinforce Young's influence over that park, the giant sequoia park. But there are also other trees that are mentioned that are named for other people. And so if we want to make sure that that information is kind of wrapped up in the end as a conclusion, then we need to actually include that in part of the last sentence. So let's look. Where among the trees dedicated and named for U.S. generals and presidents, the Colonel Young tree also stands. That is the best answer. The reason that is the best answer is because there are other trees that are dedicated and named for those generals and presidents. This only mentions one. So we know it can't be that. Okay? Does that help you understand how to provide a suitable conclusion in a text? I suggest that you look at those other items, and I would determine, is that asking you about an introduction, conclusion, or a transition? And really practice those skills, dig into those, maybe even go back to your justifications for those items so that you can help yourself understand the differences between those suitable and non-suitable transitions or places to put your introduction, conclusion, and transition. All right, now let's look at one that is about a transition. This is item number 5. Which choice provides the most effective transition from the first 2 sentences of the paragraph to the rest of the paragraph? So we're looking at item 5. So let's read this. She found her inspiration in how technology has developed over time. When Anderson was growing up in the 1950s, space travel and artificial intelligence existed only in science fiction stories. A half-century later, at NASA, Anderson witnessed the realization of both. During a visit to a virtual airport control center, Anderson viewed panoramic images of the red planet, courtesy of a video feed from the Mars Global Surveyor satellite. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, she was introduced to robots that function autonomously through control and sensor processing software. So let's look at the introduction to this sentence. It says that she found her inspiration in how technology has developed over time. So does the rest of the paragraph, those transition places, does this particular transition at 5 connect all of these ideas? So here it talks about her progression and how she was introduced. So it talks about when she was growing up, and then it talked about her witnessing the realization of both, and then it transitions into this virtual airport control center. So the transition that they have in there is the best transition. If you look at the other options, they don't transition this idea of her finding her inspiration to this idea of technology and AI and artificial intelligence and science fiction. It doesn't connect all of those. So again, go back to your justifications, and you can hear again why B, C, and D are not the best answer choices for this particular item. But you see the difference now between, again, an introduction, a conclusion, and a transition, and finding the best suitable one in this section. So this is, again, production of writing, and so you should know the best way to introduce a topic, the best way to conclude a topic, and how to transition between ideas. All right, let's look at our next learning target. Rearrange sentences in a paragraph to establish a logical flow. Whew, my teacher in college loved that word flow. This does not flow well, she would say, and it would frustrate all of us, but we got to where when we were reading and proofreading other people's papers, we understood the idea of flow. And so you need to understand that as well. So let's look at this paragraph, and you see it numbers it for you. It tells you where we're looking, 1, 2, and 3. There's 3 sentences in this paragraph. So, at the Broadway station of the Long Island Railroad in Flushing, Queens, Commuters ponder a mural spanning over 300 square feet on the station's south wall. But as they come closer, commuters notice the silhouettes are also mosaics, constructed entirely of ceramic shards. From afar, the mural appears as a series of aquamarine vase-shaped silhouettes against a white tile background. All right, so sentence 1 does introduce the topic, right? At the Broadway station, this is what commuters see. It's just that introduces the topic very well. But if you look, this transition, but as they come closer, does not transition well to establish a logical flow. So if we put 3 before 2, then this says from afar, so as they're walking in, right, so they're far away, they see a series of aquamarine vase-shaped silhouettes. But then as they come closer, they notice that they are mosaics, okay? And they're these tiles or shards, okay? So the correct answer here, or the best answer, is to put these in 1, 3, 2 order. So a little tidbit, how to best test yourself on this skill. Now know out of 75 items, there was only 1 on this test. There could be 2 or 3 on your next one, because none of these are set in stone as far as how many items there are going to be on each particular test. But one of the ways that I helped my students with this is I would take a paragraph and I would cut sentence strips, and I would make them put those sentence strips in order of paragraph or sentence number for a logical paragraph, and then make them justify why they put them in that order. And they would start debating amongst each other. No, this sentence goes here because this has this transition in it. And that is a really good way for you to look at how to organize a paragraph so that it has a logical flow and that all of those ideas kind of connect to each other in a way that is logical. All right, we've done the logical flow of a sentence. Now let's look at our last learning target. Now, this particular learning target did not have any items on the test that you just took. So this is an item from a previous ACT test. I'm just going to tell you, I don't have the answer because I don't have the entire passage in front of me, nor do you need to read that entire passage to see what this particular learning target will look like on your test. So, determine whether or where to divide a paragraph. Sometimes a paragraph needs to be divided into 2 different paragraphs because they're 2 different ideas. So it says the question will look like, at this point, the writer is considering dividing the paragraph into 2. Should the writer begin or not begin a new paragraph here, and why? Okay, so that goes back to some of those other skills or those other learning targets that we've looked at. So yet you have to determine whether it should first of all be split, yes or no. So here are your 2. You have 2 reasons for why you should begin a new paragraph and 2 reasons for why you should not separate that paragraph into 2. And then it has the justifications. So make sure that you can justify why that paragraph should or should not be divided. And that will help you get the best answer for this particular type of item. And so as far as production of writing, that is it for this test. We're not going to look at any more. The next time we meet, we'll talk about knowledge of language, and we'll dig into some of those learning targets and some of those skills that you need to be effective for knowledge of language. Until next time, happy learning.